Well, hello and welcome back to Midweek Mashup. Today I'm sitting down with Pastor Will. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Here's your microphone.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
There, now we can hear you.
There you go.
Thank you so much for concluding our series on one story this weekend. I really enjoyed your message.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What was kind of your thought process going into this message? I know you prepared these pretty far in advance.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Some of the preaching that was done to the series was really, at the same time, it was really broad. We covered a lot of really big topics, but they did it in such a way that I was really blessed by it, and I learned a lot. So for me, wrapping up the series, I wanted to make sure that we were really looking at what does the Bible say that the church is. I think we all come with a lot of ideas that we grow up with, a lot of expectations that we have from the church, and a lot of things that we look for in a church when we're out there church shopping, you know. And I think what was really important was to look at, what did the Bible say? And so I just wanted to go back to the very beginnings of the Jesus movement and see how this whole thing got started.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you had kind of a difficult task ahead of you, because we're taking a look at first century Jewish, now Christian believers,
Right.
Who are doing their thing in the Middle East.
Right.
And we're now 21st century Christians in America. How are we supposed to bridge that gap? That's insane.
Right. Well, that's why, everything about context matters. I think if you want to get to the deeper things, you need to put your feet in the shoes that these people were living in. What was their culture like? How were women treated? How were children treated? Just what it looked like, because we live in a much, much, much different world. And over, 2,000 years of the church, a lot of stuff gets in there. And so the great thing is that we have, the majority of the New Testament are written to churches that were just beginning, and already at the very beginning of church, stuff's creeping in there that shouldn't get in there. And so we bring ourselves when we come to the church, and we bring a lot of our ideas and a lot of I think, some of the things that we want to get out of church. And so things starts happening into the church. So immediately what happens is the apostles are writing to churches, not only correcting them, but encouraging them in the things that they are doing well and the things that kind of slip in. And so if you go over through any of the epistles, there are things that completely address maybe not the context that they were in, but it is applicable to our context, because we're looking at subjects like pride, we're looking at greed, we're looking at covetousness, we're looking at things like that. And those things are, those things are timeless. Those things are things that every human being wrestles with. So it shouldn't be any kind of surprise that, when the church forms, that, we bring in our baggage with us.
There's obviously a lot of things to write about.
Right.
Paul does a lot of writing. He does a lot of heavy lifting in the New Testament. And then we also get people like James and Peter who are writing things. How are we supposed to know what is applicable for us today, and what is more targeted towards like the churches of those times? Because some of those things, like you said, like pride, like it's something that it's always going to be a struggle for churches. But there's some interesting things in the epistles that it sounds like it's maybe targeted towards a very specific audience, but how do we know that for sure?
Right. So I think that first off, we have to understand the context of what they were going through. So we can look at the situation, and then we can look at what was the apostles' teachings towards those things. But I realize that in every generation of the church, we're going to have a new the next group of Christians that join the church. They are going to bring in all of their baggage as well. So we have to look back and maybe tie in what some of the root things of all of these things are. So, for example, let's say it talks about I don't know. It talks about everything from sexual purity to things like that. Well, like like, yeah, we want people to be pure as well. We want people to look at those. We want people to walk and live in a holy way. However, when you look at the way Jesus cares more about sin than we do. So if you look at Jesus, he doesn't just want people to have sex outside of marriage, but he wants to get rid of lust altogether. So I think that when we look at like some of the deeper things, it's not just about sleeping with someone else. It's about learning how not to lust and how to properly see another human being as a person, not as a commodity to be used.
So it sounds like kind of what you're saying is, and let me know if I'm getting this right. Like it's not necessarily like a rule book that we're supposed to follow, but we're supposed to understand kind of like the intent behind it, the heart, the root of it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, right. So let's say that I'm having a conversation with you, and then somebody hears something that kind of makes sense out of that conversation and wants to use that to support whatever they're trying to say. If it's completely out of context, it may have nothing to do with the topic that was in there. So I think that we have the Gospels, which are 4 different eyewitness accounts of Jesus in the New Testament. But then the majority, after Acts, the majority of the New Testament are apostles writing to people, encouraging them and correcting them. And I think that it's very easy to want to do a cut paste of something because it just seems like a really quick fix. But some of the things that we have to do when we're reading, especially the epistles, is that these were written down speeches. Most people didn't read or write back then. So these were things that were spoken. And a lot of times I think that, if I'm just trying to get my 2 minutes of Bible a day, and which is fine, but if I'm only reading 8 verses here, 6 verses here, 10 verses here, and I'm coming back to it that next day and next day and next day. A lot of stuff happens in between those readings, and I think what can happen is that we miss the point of the entire letter. So we need to read the entire letters in the whole, so that we can understand what is the writer trying to say to these people that he cares about. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Like, what are your recommendations for that? Like, because we can get really caught up in like chapters and verses where, like you're saying, it's kind of all supposed to be one letter, and then all those numbers are added in later.
Right.
What's your recommendation? Like, how do you approach reading something from like Paul?
Paul makes my brain hurt because he's a really smart guy. But I think if we look at kind of what we talked about on Sunday, and I think a lot of people in the kingdom, I think that we come to church, but I think that we try to live our relationship with God very independently. And I'm glad you're coming to church. I'm glad you're trying to develop your relationship with God, but like, what about developing your relationship with other people? So I will be honest, if you're struggling with any of the epistles, go through it with someone. Go through it with someone, maybe somebody that knows more than you, that maybe is a little more seasoned, or somebody that doesn't, because whether you're learning from someone and they're walking with you, or you're walking with someone else, both of you are going to point out things that the other person may miss because of perspective. All of our, we have different life experiences, and what I have to understand is that my experiences are different from yours. And that, not that necessarily the way that I'm looking at a piece of scripture can be wrong, but this has actually happened a lot of times in our friendship, is that you've looked at it from you've come at it from a different angle and completely have blown my mind and helped me see things that I would have never have seen before had it not been from your unique perspective. So I think that it's great if you're spending time reading scripture. That's a very, very, very good practice. But if you really, really want to learn, I think that you need a sparring partner. It's kind of like Daniel LaRusso learning from the karate book. You need a teacher. And so I think life on life, people meeting with scripture in the middle, and I think that's not only how we get to the deeper parts of scriptures, or we come up with even bigger questions that we may not have thought of, that we need to go somewhere else, but also I think that we heard about that. Somebody was talking about marriage just a couple of months ago, and they looked at it like this. So if you see marriage as a triangle where you've got God at the top and your husband and wife on either corner, the closer they get to God, each of them get to God, the closer they're actually growing together. And so I think that can put that with any two human beings in the church. The closer we get to God, the closer that we're going to get to one another. And let's be honest, like as life's journey goes on, hey, I'm glad that God is with me, and I know that he'll never leave me. But it really helps to have people in my life that I'm there for them, and that even though if I don't ask, they're there for me. And it's because, we've spent time together, we built relationships, and we genuinely care for one another. So I think that some of the hardest things that we can do is wanting to do this with someone. I think the biggest mistake that we can do is not doing this with someone and still trying to keep it very private, very hidden. What are we hiding? We don't need to live in secret from one another. We're part of a church family, and we're here to grow. And so growth doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing a little bit more, just your perspectives about the epistles. If you want to hear more from Pastor Will, I'll go ahead and add a banner to his message going through the church.
Yeah. Acts 2.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to hear more content from us, we have some more for you right here.